And good morning, Hoosier Nation, and welcome to, I'm going to give this to Gritty, this intro, another hump edition of Hoosier Morning After. This is Hoosier Morning After Michigan State. I don't know if it's delusional to be laughing, to be smiling in situations like this, but that's kind of where my head is, at least this morning. Yesterday, your Indiana Hoosiers go on to continue on the losing streak, bringing it up to 4 in a row in a 77-64 loss to Michigan State at home. A very dire end of the season. A seat that we have sat in many times recently. A seat that I don't like. It's not very comfortable. But here we are. Indiana right now sits 17-12 on the season, 8-10 in the Big Ten. In this one, it was really just the matter of a hole dug early for this team that IU just couldn't get out of. At the start of the game, Indiana had no answer for the big men of Michigan State, which would bring out a lead and help them create a lead of about 10 points by the 11-minute mark, which would basically just be nursed by Michigan State for the rest of the game, despite in the second half Indiana having some decent moments where they would draw it closer, bringing it within 5 at one point, but would just follow that up on the offensive end with lapses in switches, turnovers, missed open shots that would then allow Michigan to finally get back into it and get things figured out. Thank you for being here with me on this show. Martha going to pop in a little bit later, finishing up some things, getting kids out to school and projects turned in and all that stuff. So got the message that Martha will join us later. I'm sure Martha steaming a little bit more, just like a lot of us in this. And welcome to this therapy session. Hopefully we can make you feel a little bit better too. Also want to apologize. I know it's been a while since we've talked and everything like that. It's been very busy part of the year for us. I know out there a lot of people dealt with flu and stuff that went through our household. We have to deal with all of that. And my daughter does competitive dance, so that's the season has started up. So I've been dealing with that a lot as well. But hey, I say this in jest. This isn't the Hoosier Hysterics podcast. I'm not going to give you a long stretch of what's going on personally. Just joking with you, Eric and Ward. I like to poke fun at y'all. But hey, this game hurts. I know, and I really feel that this game hurts so much more because of what happened with Northwestern. If we did not drop Northwestern like we did, if we did not struggle in that game like we did, I think it would be a very different feeling for us coming out of this game. Because, again, Michigan State's doing pretty well. We were obviously not matched up talent-wise against a Michigan State team. So this was always going to be a close one. This was always going to be possibly a loss on the schedule. And I think, again, it just stings a little bit more because of Northwestern. And now, obviously, with us, school projects turned in, back here live. We haven't talked in a while, Martha, obviously. We'll get to some of the old stuff that we've missed talking with these people. But first, just give me your opening thoughts on yesterday's game.
Caught the tail end of kind of what you said and putting ourselves as a program, as a team in position where this it kind of became a must win, right? And it's probably the most difficult one to win out of some of the games I heard you just mention, right? I mean, you think about earlier in the week against Northwestern, earlier in the season at Minnesota, the USC game. Those are all games that like if you find a way to get those wins, this doesn't become necessarily a must win because also, to your points, our roster is just not in a position to be able to compete with Michigan State yet. So you put yourself in an awfully tough position, and as frustrating as it is, it's reality for where Indiana is right now. Is that we're just, I've talked to a lot of folks who I trust their basketball knowledge a lot more than my own, and it's like the bones are there, the structure's there in terms of you watch the system, you watch the things, and then you bring our new GM hire, and we just don't have the dudes, the guys. And that's frustrating to me because it always feels like at Indiana, the runway is miles and miles longer at times than it might be at other places. Like, why can other programs go get dudes in year one? And for us, it just seems like this year's almost turning into a punt. And so that side of it is frustrating. It really, really is. I'm glad to see they've addressed it in terms of hiring a GM in this NIL world. But when you think about this season, it's really, really hard to go through a Big Ten schedule and not have, to only have your structure to rely on and not have guys to go out and run it and bigs to be able to go out. I mean, you look at it, we just can't defend. And obviously there's not enough scoring options as well, but like the defense has really, really faltered as of late. And I think that's just a lack of athleticism, a lack of good enough players. And so as frustrating as it is, it is what it is. And the one solace I do take is just the fact that, like, when you watch this, you can see something there. And I think that bodes well for the future moving forward, but it's certainly frustrating in the moment, sitting here again in March on the wrong side of the bubble, like we have been so many times in previous history.
Yeah, I want to dig a little deeper on that because I did want to talk about that. I mean, the fight and effort is there. I know that was in question a little bit during the Northwestern game, but in this game, I think it was there. You just didn't have the scoring beyond DeVries and Lamar. The talent is just the factor that isn't there. It's just the construction, the quick nature of having to get this group together and everything and fill a full roster. And like you said, yes, other teams have been able to do that and hit and everything. But the system, I believe 100% is there. There were open shots that guys were able to see and just didn't go down. And it's hard to look at that in this kind of context of the recent games. But I think if you look earlier in the part of the season when we were talking about a lot of those wins, and I was bringing up during the stat section of the podcast, talking about our assists to made baskets, when things looked a lot easier, the screening was looking a lot easier. That's because we were playing against equal talent. So that's where I kind of try to find some solace, is that when we have played teams that are at the same talent level or closer to it than what we're dealing with now, you see a lot more success on the offensive end. You see a lot better flow and everything with that. And to that argument, that's what makes this offseason so important. And like you said, the addition of Ryan Carr, the addition of having a proven GM type person, a guy that has shown or has the resume being in the pros and all that, has the eye to find talent, has the connections that are being reported through different agents and finding guys, is going to pay dividends and is going to be something that Indiana is going to lean on big time. And I'm sure he's already blowing up his phone trying to do things. And as we always like to have as Indiana fans, he's got the tie back to Indiana as well. And I think the biggest thing that they're going to have to do, and I hate that we always like to draw these parallels now between football and basketball, but what they're going to have to do in this offseason is take the Curt Cignetti approach of production over potential. And I think it was leaning so much on that potential of mid-major guys coming up into the Big Ten to be able to score and contribute. That was a case with Reed Bailey. I know student section, everyone was really hard on him. We'll get deeper into that, I think, a little bit later. But Lamar was kind of one that was able to make that jump, coming from Sam Houston, being the guy that he is. But then you get others that transition just hasn't happened. What are your kind of thoughts, obviously, and kind of all that and what we need to do in this offseason?
Well, I mean, if you look at you look at the evolution through the season, assume we're going to get into individual players here momentarily, but just the inconsistencies, whether it's Connerway or Dorn. I mean, you've got four collective guys, three on the bench and one starter that played 60 minutes and scored a combined 3 points yesterday. You're just not going to win with that type of production. I don't even know if the bench scored.
They did.
And yeah, I mean, you just that. And I think that's a little bit of a red flag for me. I mean, I listen. I think Darren DeVries can coach basketball. I really, really do. And I think you watch some of the sets, you watch how we've looked at times during the season. There's some things there. The red flag in my head is like what went into the planning part of putting this roster together. And I know it was shorter than some programs get. Portal opens early. It's one of those things. And I think the one saving grace is year one, but that's in my head, that's a red flag. It's like, man, there's just this was not a well thought, well planned out roster for us to be able to go out and compete. And that's the concerning part to me. And again, I feel like we've addressed that, but still, there's still like, why did this happen? Why did this happen? It's so. It's just there's way too many inconsistencies across this roster. I don't know what happened to Tate Connerway. You can say the same thing with Nick Dorn in terms of, you look at his last 5 or 6 games compared to the previous 3 or 4. So just a lot of inconsistencies, and it seems like a trend with the program, regardless of who the coach has been. You get to late February and March, and there's just this, just the play goes downhill quickly at the most important time. And it's really, really frustrating to be sitting here again. So again, bringing in a guy with Ryan Carr's basketball knowledge of the game, knowledge of putting together a roster, that's exciting to me to be able to have that. It's just, it's also frustrating to be sitting here and looking forward to the future once again as a fan.
Before we get too deep into, I want to shift and talk, before we talked about players, I want to shift and talk about the defense, because I do think there are some positives to take from that. We kind of want to do compliment sandwich. I don't want to keep doing bad things, I guess. But anyways, defensively, while I think it was frustrating at least to start the game because Indiana could not stop Michigan's big guys. And they struggled with that. And I was screaming at the TV because they would run those little double screens or just even a single screen, and Indiana was switching every single time, and poor Enright was having to fight for his life against one of their bigs, and then they just were able to play a high-low game and just put him in the mixer. And I think that's a lot that contributed to the deficit to start the game. And then Indiana in the second half, I think it was, I don't think they did any in the first half. I do think the coaching staff realized that, and we haven't seen it much this year. But they went to that matchup zone. And that did give Michigan State considerable fits and allowed for some good scoring droughts from them in the second half, including almost a 5-minute scoring drought towards the end of the game. And Indiana was able to bring it within 5 at one point in the second half. They brought it kind of within 8, 7. And you saw these little moments where Indiana was able to bring it back. They just didn't have it on the offensive end. And I think that was due to, obviously, what's lacking from bench scoring, a third scorer, but then also just having your 2 guys that are doing most of the scoring at that point have been out there for every single minute. I mean, Lamar sat out for 1 minute. I mean, you saw him kind of go out and then come back in. And Tucker didn't sit at all. And he didn't need to sit. He shouldn't have sat because he played well, but you saw those legs get tired. Any thoughts that you have from that zone, and maybe they found a little bit of something that kind of make up for things in this game?
Yeah, I think it was effective. I think, you look at how productive Michigan State was in the first half. The effort was certainly there. It was just a matter of being able to get stops and stack stops. It was just something early in the game that was kind of backbreaking to us. Kurt Hanger, I think is his name, for Michigan State, was just, it felt like he couldn't miss. And then we had problems stopping Kohler as well. Especially early in the first half. I think, I don't know what they were from 3 early in the first half, but it just felt at times like an onslaught, and we had no answers. So I think the zone was maybe a last ditch attempt to try to slow them down, and it was effective. So I think that was a wise move. It was good to see. I think it was maybe the one answer we had a little bit defensively. So liked it. I think it was just too little too late. And when you can't match it with offensive production, it makes it difficult. It felt like the damage kind of was already done. But again, it was a nice answer. to try to give IU a chance down the stretch. Unfortunately, we just couldn't. We couldn't find that magic on the offensive end.
Yeah, Tang felt like that old kind of adage that used to happen with Indiana, where you'd get these players that normally don't shoot well for opponents that suddenly just something about Assembly Hall likes them to go on fire. And yeah, he definitely opened it up for them and was a big contributor for their win in this. I do want to again give some praise to Tucker for putting in the effort that he did, really trying to will this team to a win. Played every minute of the game, 20 points, was 6 for 16 from the field, which was horrendous. 3 for 12 from 3-point. Did hit all of his free throws, and then was also the leading rebounder of this team with 6 rebounds. You really saw him trying to put every ounce of effort into this game. There were some miscues on defense on some of those switches and stuff like that where guys got left. I think Carr had an easy layup at one point. But again, I like what he did for the game. And I people are going to keep arguing and complaining that why isn't Sicily playing? And again, I just think it's because we got to have Tucker out there. Your thoughts on Tucker's game?
Yeah, I've got some appreciation for him. I think you can see, when you can see after games what he's talking, he's just, it seems like mentally and emotionally drained. And I feel again he's given everything he's got. I still wonder if there's some lingering, nagging injuries he's playing through, just in terms of being 100% there. But I don't think he left the court, like you said. So to play 40 minutes, put up 20 points. That's given everything you've got. Obviously, would love to see him connect a little bit more from 3 of 12. Probably not quite good enough. Good looks, just, we've seen that quite a bit this year where it's hot and cold from him and maybe a little bit more cold than we'd like. But yeah, Tucker, if he was just surrounded by a little bit more talent where it didn't fall all on his shoulders, I think we'd learn to probably have a little bit more appreciation for what he gives us every single night. I just think with him and Lamar, so much of the weight are falling on their shoulders. That's a lot of pressure because those two guys know they have to carry us offensively for us to even have a shot at this point. And that's a lot. That's a lot. And defenses know that too, right? I mean, defenses know that if you shut down a guy or two, that your chance of winning is incredibly, incredibly high. And, so that's a lot to wear for those two guys, especially over the duration of a season. And I think you're starting to see it. They sound exhausted mentally and physically. But I'm convinced they're leaving everything out there. So I certainly appreciate what they're bringing out for us.
Not to mention, especially in this game too, where you get DeVries that has to match up against a guy that's considerably bigger than him and Kohler, a fantastic player on Michigan State's team, and did a pretty good job of limiting him at least and making things frustrating for him. But yeah, just a real battle for him and Lamar. And Lamar, again, puts up fantastic points, 29 on 11 for 21 shooting. Again, struggled big time from 3 from him, 5 for 14. And I don't think many of those were rushed shots or overguarded shots. He got some good looks. Again, they just weren't falling, and that can be quite a dagger in a game like this where you are battling back and defense does do some things at some points, especially in the second half, to slow things, and you just can't get those shots to drop. But towards the end of the game, you did see him just try to bully and get in there and got some good points in the paint, something that was obviously really lacking for this team. Your thoughts on Lamar? We've kind of said it all, but any other little things to add on him?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, but it's like I feel like he deserves more. He deserves better, right? He's the one guy who I feel like, and you hear it a little bit with Tucker too, but the accountability just in terms of just expecting more, expecting better for Indiana basketball, just, especially after Northwestern, and you heard it a little bit too, and just trying to find a way to get some wins down the stretch. And obviously they know they're in a tough position now, but Lamar, I mean, just imagine if we don't have Lamar, right? I mean, 29 points. I don't know what his average is up to, but I mean, he's put this team on his shoulders, and he deserves all the credit in the world, and he does deserve a little bit more. It's frustrating that our postseason chances are obviously there's still that chance, and obviously we got some opportunities down the stretch. But for a guy, he deserves to shine in March, and he deserves to see a tournament. He's a guy that can go off at any time and be one of those guys that carries the team to wins down the stretch into March. So just unfortunate. I think he deserves a little bit more, but man, he's been a lot of fun to watch.
That'd be an interesting podcast deep dive to get into, albeit a very depressing one. But my brain went to that area where there have been a lot of players in Indiana's past that have been squandered, just not having the parts around them, and you want to kind of pluck them and put them with other units of the past. But looked it up real quick. Lamar is kind of sitting at a 21-point average on the season, which I'm kind of shocked about. I thought it would be higher than that. Maybe some lower games to start the season kind of affecting that for him. Someone that, again, continues to surprise us and I think would be a fantastic first off the bench guy, but we've had to rely on him in the starting lineup is Alexis. Like we've said recently, he's kind of unlocked a different part of his game with some offensive moves we haven't expected or seen from him before. Goes for 8 points on 3 for 4 shooting, with 2 out of 4 free throws made from him, with 5 rebounds. But again, reading that stat line, that's a stat line you want to see out of your backup center coming in. But love the effort we've seen from him, at least. Your thoughts on Alexis?
Yeah, I mean, yes. He's been the guy down low that obviously maybe a little bit undersized for a Big Ten center, but he's been the one guy to give us kind of a chance down there. And he's really started about a month ago, 3-4 weeks ago, started to find his offensive game. We've started to use him a little bit more. He's been the one guy outside of Lamar and Tucker that we can kind of look to get us some production offensively. So it's been fun to see it kind of click for him. Wasn't really there early in the year, but yeah, he plays his butt off. It's fun to see, and it was obviously a tall task yesterday, but put up 31 minutes, 8 points. You would have liked to see a little bit more there, maybe a few more rebounds, but again, I think he battled, right? That's a tall task playing against those Michigan State big guys. So I thought he gave us everything he could.
Yeah. And the other one that you alluded to earlier, you talked a little bit about, but we can talk a little deeper on, is Nick Dorn has been just kind of absent a lot from that success we had in the middle part of the Big Ten season. And we have to get more contribution. He's that third guy that we talked about when things were happening. And we'll get to the other one. We thought Connerway was going to possibly be that third guy as well. But the stretches of game recently, just you've seen him absent. I mean, looking back, I've got it pulled up here. You look back to Oregon was the last win by Indiana, and you had 11 points from him. And that's kind of what you want to see, just a little contribution from that. And there's a win for you. But then you go to Illinois, and that loss 1 point. In the Purdue game, in 25 minutes, no points. In the Northwestern game, 32 minutes and 8 points. And in this game, he plays for 28 minutes, and you get 4 points out of him. We just got to find more production for him. We got to see him lock in. I know he has struggled a little bit on defense in the switching and everything like that. There's some miscommunications that happen. And if those things are going to happen, you've got to get some contribution on the other side. Unfortunately, I don't know who else you put in, because the fact that he has the ability to go off and be that third scorer, you have to, as a coaching staff, ride with him a little bit more than you would like to. Your thoughts on kind of the Nick Dorn conundrum that we've run into in this stretch of the season?
Yeah, it's a large conundrum. I mean, it's when your front court's built like it is, you've got to have you've got to have that consistent third scoring option, and when you combine him with any other remotely close third scoring options, it's just been way too inconsistent. And it speaks to maybe this is what they're capable of. Obviously, we've seen Dorn have some really, really good games. I remember his West Coast trip was really, really strong. It was kind of his breaking out party. And I can't remember what school he came from, but he had a really productive year last year. And so there was some hope that once he got healthy, that he'd be that consistent guy. And it just hasn't been good enough. And it's kind of been simultaneous to Tate and Connerway's, struggles and injuries. And when those two things happen together at the same time, doesn't give Indiana much of a chance to get any momentum, because again, it goes back to teams keying on two guys. You don't have a lot to offer down low. So who's that third guy that's going to step up? Well, it needs to be a Nick Dorn. It needs to be a Tate and Connerway. And they just aren't. And it hasn't been nearly as consistent as it needs to be. And I don't have the answer as to why. Nick Dorn's not an overly athletic guy. You can clearly see that. So I think you mentioned struggling on the defensive end. That's certainly a thing. But like even the looks he's getting offensively that he was knocking down at one point, he's not now. So not sure the why behind that one, but it's been frustrating and kind of adds up when you look at when Indiana started to struggle here down the stretch. We've lost that third option. So it's challenging, and we've got a couple games for him to figure it out down the stretch here, and hopefully he does.
Yeah, and I think next I kind of want to lump together talking about our point guards, because while I don't have too many negatives to say about Connor Enright, because he's putting the effort out there, he's trying to be that dog, and he has been a good contributor, at least from a assist standpoint for Indiana, getting things going in this game. However, he just finishes with 2 assists on one made basket, 1 for 7, 1 for 5 from 3 on 3 points. And that's where it alludes to. You look in comparison to what Michigan State has with their point guard in Fears, scoring 21 points, tied for top amount of points on their team. And this team just doesn't have that scoring point guard. And that's one big checklist that you have to have in this offseason. That's one of probably a bullet point sitting in bold and underlined in Ryan Carr's notes, is to find that scoring point guard, which we felt like we had for a while in Tate and Connerway, and dealing with injuries or mental block or whatever it is, whatever rumor or talk you want to think about with Tatum. That's been absent, and we've needed that. We saw it from him at the beginning of the season, where Tatum was able to be that guy to get downhill for Indiana, touch the paint, and kick it out. And that's where you saw added success with Nick Dorn. That's where Nick Dorn can succeed, because he can be out there ready to catch and score and shoot. Same with Alexis. Same with Tucker. When you don't have that scoring threat from your point guard to suck everyone in, then everything else is going to be a struggle from there. That's kind of how this team is built, on a scoring point guard. You can get as much as you want from Enright, but if he's not going to be a threat, guys are going to stay at home and everything. Your kind of thoughts on that big hole or gap that we have in point guard?
We know who. Yeah, it speaks to everything we've talked about, right? We know who Connor Enright is, and you know who he isn't, and he's a guy that when he's surrounded by offensive options, which he should be, right? I mean, if you're having to lean on Connor Enright to be an offensive threat, then that's a significant issue. He's there to be a point guard. He's there to defend. He'll knock down an open shot occasionally. He'll probably give you 30 minutes and bust his butt, but he's not going to be a guy that's going to put up double-figure points very often, right? So he's just that guy that helps you get through the grind of a Big Ten season. Again, it's every good team needs a guy like him, but you can't rely on him to be a good team. You've got to be surrounded by scorers, by athletes, and when you put him on a bad offensive team, all of a sudden questions are like, why? What value does he bring? And so yeah, that part of it is what it is. But I think he's just a victim of a poor roster, quite honestly. And the positives we take for him are just effort and defense.
Yeah, and I think it's that we point at with this team, where there's too many of the players on this team that we go, well, he'd be a fantastic player off the bench. But unfortunately, in this team, we have to start them. And there's an uncomfortable conversation equally so that we do have to have now. And I think we have to talk about it. And Gritty does bring it up in the chat as well. And she says, who is going to want to play for IU when your own student section are booing their own players? And obviously that discussion and comment comes out of Reed Bailey. And what you saw or heard on the broadcast I could hear was the boos when he was getting subbed in and out and everything like that. And then just the frustration. Ant pulled the great clip that you can see if you go to his Twitter of Reed Bailey getting the ball perfectly just right outside the paint on the edge, on the corner, with Jeremy Fears coming to guard him. And he doesn't immediately look to go to the basket. And that's frustrating that you have a player doing that. You don't want to see that out of an Indiana player. You want to see him be aggressive and everything. And while I don't like the booing of players, it opens up an awkward and interesting conversation where we sit now in NIL world where they're not just college players anymore, per se. They are getting paid a good amount of dollars. They're kind of like pro players. So does that allow for a little bit more criticism that they need to shoulder? But in the counter argument to that as well is, what does that do to the player's psyche of hearing those boos? When he catches the ball and has fears, is he less likely to go at it because here, if I screw up, I'm going to hear it even more? I don't know. It's a weird situation to be in. It's one that obviously I don't like as Indiana fans. I never like when we do that. And Gritty has a good point there. We've kind of always talked about that. And you hear rumors that people and players, there are some agents out there that don't want their players to come to Indiana because of that bit of, and it's strong to say toxicity, but frustration breeds that toxicity from the fan base of booing their own players. I'm never a fan of that. Your kind of thoughts on maybe that theme? You can get into Reed Bailey, but of that situation we're sitting in.
Yeah, it is
exactly.
I don't think it's necessary. I understand. Listen, every fan base, when you put 18 to 22-year-olds and anywhere collectively together, you're not always going to get the wisest choices made. That's not an excuse. It's not right. I think it kind of starts on social media. Reed Bailey's his name's been thrown out there since the beginning of the season as somebody that's been frustrating to watch. So I think it's been brewing for some time, especially when you combined it with the struggles of the program, not only this season, but you think about a senior student at IU now. You're now going into your fourth season and with maybe 1 year of making the tournament. I mean, and again, without trying to make any of this sound like an excuse, I think you've got a collective fan base that is at the core of it all. You try to be very, very understanding of the situation. You're in Darren DeRise's first season. There needs to be a little bit of patience, but how long and how often do we have to be patient?
Mm-hmm.
Think about the time, money, energy, resources that are dumped into this program to make the tournament 2 times in the last 9 years. It's just it's unacceptable results collectively over a long span of time, and sometimes it comes out in moments when it shouldn't, and we all react that way. Everybody I talk to in person is so fed up with Indiana basketball. There's so much uninvestment to it right now, or so much apathy to it right now, and I think it goes a little bit understated. We're kind of in a prove it to me time frame or area for this program. It's like we've been patient long enough, and anytime we do get together for a big game like that, and the results are what they are, you're probably going to hear some frustrations come out like that. Should they be directed at one person? No, I don't think that's ever okay, but that's that's college students making poor decisions, I think, and but it doesn't help when the same vitriol and negativity is on social media at the same time, right? Directed at individuals. So certainly doesn't help. I think the fix is just go out and win basketball games. Put a program together that's going to win basketball games. It shouldn't be this hard. And I think that's the frustration. Is this appears to have such a long runway, to be such an uphill climb, that we're tired of waiting. We're frustrated of waiting. Like, what? It's another year of being on the wrong side of the bubble, and we're being asked to be patient. Yet it's our fault. It's our fault, right? And I think that's what a lot of people feel, is like, oh, here we go again. It's now time to turn this on the fans because we're impatient, because our expectations are unrealistic, which I think is a load of crap. I think it's an absolute excuse. I think any 18 to 22-year-old is going to want to come play here if the dollar's right. It's a big time program. I'm not worried about it from that sense. I think it's a bad look in the moment and something that needs to be thought longer about. But at the end of the day, I just want to win basketball games and not boo our players, and not be in a position to boo our players. So it's frustrating. It's very frustrating to even have to talk about. And thankfully, we only have one home game left, and hopefully there's no situation where that happens again.
Yeah. I mean, Indiana basketball has felt like, for the years, and it always has been, just a coveted fan base. I mean, you've got such a knowledgeable, when I watch other games, I mean, granted, you're going to have that with our college students and stuff like that, but I feel like our fan base's knowledge of the game is so much higher than others are. You see other games where fans are complaining about this or that, and you're like, that's obviously not a foul, or that obviously is. And our fan base feels like they handle that a little bit better. But I liken the analogy of Indiana basketball right now and how it's been in the past 10 years to being that firework tube that's sitting there and ready to be ignited. And too many times it's been ignited, and instead of shooting up into the air and explode in this beautiful cream and crimson firework that just goes, you go ooh and ah and draws everyone in with enthusiasm like football did, it's been one where it's been lit and it blows up in our face and in the motor and ruins our new car that's parked over there, and you're just like, oh, here we go again. But it's still there and can still be lit, and just win the games, light that firework, set it off, bring us all in, because then it's just like full throttle, put the pedal to the metal. Here we go. It's football again. We get all things going. So that, I think that's equally where the frustration builds for me. And that's why, at least I think with this coaching staff, and I'm not, maybe we skip diving into too many stats and stuff in this realm, and we just kind of look forward and everything now. But I think this is where that Ryan Carr hire allows me to set aside and build some of that hope, because it at least shows acknowledgement by this coaching staff, by Scott Dolson, if he has obviously a hand in discussing bringing in Ryan Carr, of acknowledgement of the issues. And again, it's a talent issue. It's a getting the right guys issue. And the hot seat is there for next season. And we're going to have to see it as a fan base turn over differently and be very different. Because while the patience is already thin, razor thin next year. But I will shift a little bit. Let's talk, because there are a few home games left. There are a few home games on the women's side that are going on. I believe in the women's side. Maybe we're done in women's side. You can correct me on that. But if you do have tickets to these games that you are beyond going, you are frustrated, fully out, Martha can tell you about what you can do with those tickets.
Yes. Thanks, buddy. No women's home games left. They concluded their season on Saturday. Had a great run down the stretch to put themselves in a position to play in the Big Ten tournament after a 0-10 conference start. So it was nice to see, and they've got a great young team. So encouraging stuff on that side. One men's game left. I think it's either Tuesday or Wednesday of this week at home against Minnesota, and they go to Ohio State.
Wednesday,
right?
It is.
Wednesday. Yep. Last home game. So tickets have already. It's interesting. Right after a loss, we're usually We usually see an uptick in donations, which is tremendous. We love it. But one last chance for us to get, some deserving souls into Assembly Hall. We had over 15 folks in the game yesterday for Michigan State. That was one of our bigger ones, and obviously a big home game, so the ticket donations were down. So to even be able to get anybody in there for a top 25 opponent was huge for us, and we certainly really appreciate that. We appreciate all the donations through this season, but one more opportunity to get deserving families, deserving youth to Assembly Hall on Wednesday. If you have tickets and are interested in making a donation, HoosierTicketProject.org/donate. Instructions are on our website. But again, it's been a tremendous year of football and basketball donations, and we really appreciate everybody taking the time to do so.
Yep. Reminder as well, you can go there and donate financially if you want to as well. As you're getting your taxes together this year, notice that maybe you need to have a few more contributions on your write-offs. You can do that as well with HoosierTicketProject.org. Final thoughts. Whatever you want to say, Martha. Full open mic, full open subject. The future of what we're doing, where you sit. What are some final thoughts to kind of cap off at least this show?
Oh boy, it's my emotions have been. I've gone from just being uber frustrated, which I am. I think we all are. I think collectively as a fan base, I think everybody is frustrated on why it feels so difficult at Indiana to get this ship righted. Where we see it at places like Louisville and other programs where you'll put somebody in place, Michigan, for example, and you'll see guys put in place and immediately that ship start to, whether it's building a roster or whether it's winning games down the stretch and not faltering in February and March. And it just seems like it's been so difficult to get any consistent momentum here at Indiana. So what is it going to take to get there? And I thought the NIL era in Indiana basketball was a marriage made in heaven. I really did. I still feel that way. You look at what we're able to do in football with a good coach, a good plan, good assistant coaches, a good foundation, and then you combine some good NIL and smart NIL spending, and look at what we were able to do in 2 seasons, right? It should be just that simple, just that easy. Not saying that it was easy on the football side. It was, perfect. Eddie's a unicorn. But when you combined our resources, our program, our tradition, it should be something that has the ability to take off pretty quickly. I think, at the end of the day, I'm willing. The Ryan Carr hire couldn't have come at a better time, I think, because you already have an apathetic fan base, even a wait and see approach coming into this season. And when the season went like it went, and but you see some glimmers of, man, we had some better athletes. If you have, I've even heard fans say, man, if we had some of Mike Woodson's roster with this system, we'd look pretty good right now. And I wholeheartedly believe that as well. So what is it going to take to get there? Well, Ryan Carr's a start. So I do put some hope in that's going to be a good marriage for IU. But I think we're now in a position where you're going to see another major roster overhaul. I wouldn't be surprised to see double-digit amount of new players. And obviously we've got a lot of seniors that are leaving anyway, but I don't know that a lot of the guys with remaining eligibility will be back. So it's going to be interesting to see how this team's built moving forward. But with a guy like Ryan Carr at the helm and a Darren DeVries system, I do hold out a little hope that this is going to get better in the short term.
Yeah, that's that. I think it's well said where you talk about you and not that we like to bang on past coaching staffs, but the talent wasn't the issue in Woodson's last year. It was getting that talent together and getting them to produce. And I like your point there where I think it would have been a very different thing. You give DeVries that talent or that roster, and Carr hopefully brings a hope that they can find that and they can do that for this team. But it is an end of the season that is very, very white knuckle. And there is still hope. There is still a situation where they make it in the tournament. You just have to take care of business. And Indiana's games leading up right now, you've got Minnesota coming up on Wednesday. Like you said, it's a 6:30 game on Big Ten Network. And then you go to Ohio State, who has looked a little bit better and gotten some things together here at the end and is sitting kind of in the same situation that Indiana is right there in the bubble. Obviously, they get a big win recently, but that game's on Saturday. It's a 5:30 p.m. game on Fox. So those are big ones. And then you got to go into the Big Ten tournament and make some noise there. But the chance is there. And so we will just tune in and see what happens with the rest of this season. And we'll be there with you to fight through it. I hope at least this morning therapy session has done dividends for you as well. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at General Chadwick. You can follow Martha at the Mop Lady. If you're watching on YouTube and everything, I appreciate you being there. Please subscribe. If you are listening on the different podcast streams as well, please subscribe. Smash the like button or leave a comment. We appreciate those as well. We enjoy being here with you. We will be here yet again to see what we talk about, hopefully better things after that Minnesota game. But until then, guys, thank you for being with us. Go out there, have yourselves a wonderful day, and let's go Hoosiers.